Let's take a look at system requirements for our project, Avionics Passenger Counter. I've clicked on System Requirements for our project, and we're put into a System Requirements list. So each row is a different system requirement. And you can see some of the similarities that I described earlier when I introduced the concept of a list when we were talking about projects. There's various columns that are fields that describe pertinent information about the type of object that's being displayed in the list, in this case, system requirements. So for system requirements, we care about our requirements ID, a description of the requirement, and then there's a lot of other optional fields that you may or may not want to fill in. For example, the source of the requirement, whether it's safety related, whether it's a derived requirement, how or where it might be implemented, if there's a model file associated with it, and then the versioning. This is kept track of in the PACT tool itself, basically how many times that requirement has been modified. And then we have our action buttons, our show, edit, mark as deleted, and delete. Let's take a look at one of these requirements here. Well, before we do that, actually, let's remind ourselves about our filtering capabilities. So generally, you'd have a pretty long list of requirements. So perhaps you just want to look for all requirements that, in this case, are associated with a rink. So in this case, for our project, we have two system requirements, System 5 and System 6. System Requirement 5 and System Requirement 6. Let's take a look at more information for the System Requirement number 5. It says, the APC shall provide a PIC microcontroller-based method for implementing fault monitoring and an ARINC 429 transmitter interface to the aircraft maintenance computer. We don't have a requirement source for this one, so let's go in and edit that. And we are going to say the source for this one is also product marketing requirements. Let's consider this one safety related, so let's click on that. And we're going to save the updated information to our system requirement. Okay, and let's go back to our system requirements list. And what else can we explore here? Let's look at a couple things that I haven't introduced yet. First of all, this area up here, this is called the breadcrumbs. This helps you navigate through the PACT hierarchy. In this case, where the highest level is all projects, we're down inside of our Avionics Passenger Counter project, and we are at the System Requirements list level, which is the highest level within that. Another thing that I wanted to point out is this special menu here. This menu changes depending on where you are in the tool. In this case, we're in the System Requirements list. Might be a very long page, and you might want to do certain things like maybe add a new system requirement without scrolling all the way down to the bottom. But these items here are the exact same as the buttons here at the bottom of the page. So let's take a look at some of those buttons. Things that we can do while we're in a system requirements list. We can add a new system requirements, and that's basically the same, all the same fields as I just showed when I was editing one. So you'll get the next incremented requirement number if you're manually adding these by hand. This was our prefix. Remember, sys requirement, that's the prefix that we've defined for this passenger counter project, 7 being the next number. We would fill in our description and any of these other optional fields that we would like. I'm going to not save that additional one. Just want to show you that we could add new ones if we wanted. We can view how our system requirements are allocated. Now typically if you're starting your project and that's the first thing you're doing is adding system requirements, nothing will be allocated yet. But later when you have items, hardware and software items that comprise that system, you will have allocated the system requirements to be implemented in one of those items. So that's what clicking on this button will show you. Here is, we're seeing our system requirements, and we're seeing how those link to high-level requirements in software items, and also high-level and conceptual design for our hardware requirements. Oops, let me go back over here. Let's continue. So you can view things that aren't linked. you can export. This is a great feature. Basically, for any object in a list, you can export that information. And generally, an export just makes it easy to pull that information in some kind of consumable format outside of the tool itself. In this case, let's say that we're ready with our system requirements to document them, so we could put those into a PDF format. Real easy. We could simply cut and paste from this and copy them into our system requirements document list. There are other formats too, especially for requirements. Excel spreadsheets are a pretty good way to capture those. Everything you can export, you can also import. In this case, it's a really important feature because a lot of people use DOORs for requirements management. The DOORs can be expensive. It can be cumbersome. Perhaps you don't want to have all of your entire team, have access to it because generally they charge by the person. So what you can do is import from DOORs. So produce a list of requirements from DOORs and import them into the PACT tool. And then once you do that, basically you'll have them in this format, this really easy to read and use format that you're seeing here. You can renumber them up to a point. For example, at the early stages of your project, you might be doing a lot of editing of your requirements, and eventually you might want to delete some, and then you might have gaps in your numbering. As long as you haven't baselined yet or have done your reviews, you're able to renumber those. And speaking of baseline, a baseline is basically a snapshot of some data for your project that you're firming up and that you're really ready to review. A baseline just takes a snapshot so that you can compare it to future versions to see what changed. So you could take a new baseline, or you can view baselines that already exist. In this case, I took a baseline earlier. I was ready to review these. So here's information about when your baseline of the system requirements was done. And I guess that's about it. That's system requirements in a nutshell. We looked at the list and the actions that you can do, and then the buttons at the bottom of the page.